I don't know what to say about what's become of the fan base in terms of its sense of itself. I know I attended Muni Lot. You know, that whole scene was a nightmare. It was before the Seahawks game. So you're with people tailgating before a football game, and the sense of rage and the sense of anarchy and the sense of kind of nihilistic, not violence really, but they've dissociated completely from the Browns, and the Dolans have really destroyed a fan base that sold out 455 straight games. People accuse me of over-defending Dan Gilbert. There are people who think that letter was just public relations. As far as I'm concerned, Dan Gilbert is as great an owner as any fan in or out of Cleveland could ever ask for. And, I understand what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. It just strikes me as tragic that the fans here haven't just not been rewarded for their faith and for their hope and for the money that they've spent and the devotion that they've shown. They've been tortured. And LeBron, in that sense, is just another unhappy ending.
With us again is Scott Raab, Esquire contributor and author of the new book, The Whore of Akron, One Man's Search for the Soul of LeBron James. Okay, I got a ton of questions about the book. I want to jump right into them. I kind of did it in chronological order of, as I was reading the book, I made notes. So if you're wondering why these are probably a little spread out. My first question for you talked a little bit about the experience with LeBron coming here. Silas was the coach in his rookie year, Coach Paul Silas. It appeared to me that Mike Brown was hired primarily as, I know he had a defensive background, but in a move that primarily was aimed at allowing LeBron James to be the de facto player coach, bringing a guy that, was not as strong, because Paul Silas was not going to put up with any games.
That's right.
Out of this kid. And to me, the best thing that ever could have happened to LeBron James would have been under the tutelage of Paul Silas, a guy that's no BS.
Absolutely.
That, an African-American player who lived and played in this league and went through everything that you can possibly go through.
That's right.
This could have been that life-changing experience that would have been a tutor-type, philosophy. He could have really grown from this guy. But I think Cleveland was terrified that any amount of resistance by a coach would have sent LeBron James running away, and I think that's why they hired a weak coach. What do you think about that?
What a horrible outcome. And walking it back, I think that's a viable theory. Dan Gilbert bought the team and I believe fired Silas with 18 games left in the season, and they missed the playoffs by a game. And there was never anyone else on the staff like Paul Silas. Maybe it wouldn't have even taken a head coach. It just would have taken someone that almost every other coaching staff has, which is an NBA vet who has some rings and some gravitas and can back down a young player in a way that the young player is going to respect. I don't know whether I believe that Mike Brown was brought in just to allow LeBron James to run LeBron's offense, even though that's what it was many nights. I think Mike Brown had a great interview. I think Dan Gilbert fell in love with Mike Brown. I think Ferry and Brown almost were a team. They had both worked together. And Mike Brown, unbelievably, and I want to this year I'm hoping I'm hoping LeBron James loses a year of his career that no amount of money will buy back. But I'm waiting. If he's going to coach the Lakers, I want to hear him say, like he said so many times here, versions of, I'm so grateful LeBron lets me coach him. You imagine Phil Jackson, Larry Brown, Pat Riley's head coach ever saying anything like that about a player? It's not that Mike Brown wasn't a great guy or a great defensive coach, but there was always something very weird about the awe or admiration or the one-down kind of psychic thing that he had with LeBron. And it turns out, of course, the whole team had that. With LeBron, I don't think was the kind of player who made huge demands, but everyone constantly was trying to figure out what LeBron wants and how LeBron's reacting and what does LeBron need. And it was a terrible outcome. However, I've heard the owner blame the GM blame the owner. No one, including the media, ever held LeBron accountable for anything negative. And after he left, I came back. I started the book as I wanted to do the happy book. After he left, I'd come back. Oh, he never even acknowledged Joe Tate's existence for 7 years, much less granted an interview. Well, gee, guess what? Nobody in the media or on the team at any point held him accountable for that or called BS on any of it.
Nobody on the team, nobody within ownership or management Nobody in the city. That's what I'm saying. I think the entire
right.
city, I think it was a culture of abdication. They gave everything to this guy.
Everything.
They believed he walked on water, and there was this deifying of this guy, and nobody would challenge him. And anybody who did, by the way, was a turncoat, was a traitor, was a person who was undermining this beautiful thing that was happening right before their eyes in Cleveland.
Right.
You couldn't be a voice of dissent because you would be immediately attacked.
It's really stunning to look back and realize that all of this was part and parcel of what wound up being 7 years with arguably the best player in the league, certainly the last couple of years, and nothing to show for it. And everyone in the wake of his departure going, well, Dan Gilbert got a casino, Danny Ferry, Mike Brown, everyone's got a job, LeBron's with the Heat. And guess what? The Cleveland fans, once again, are left bereft. I mean, I hope Kyrie and Tristan become the greatest rookie tandem in the history of the NBA, but things are going to have to break right for that team for a long time to ever get back to the point where we all feel going into a season that we're legitimate contenders for an NBA title. And when you step back and see that deification, and I don't want to make light of it, but in a way, you see it with Colt McCoy or Peyton Hillis or Grady Sizemore. I don't know what it's going to take. I mean, each of those franchises over the past few decades has built a team good enough in theory, good enough on the field. Not that long ago, the Tribe's up 3-1 against Boston, 2007. Mm-hmm. I mean, and they, in a very short period of time, have fallen apart. The Browns, I know in the power rankings they're 31st out of 32 NFL. I'm not even sure what team is behind them.
It had to be the Colts. They're 0-10 or 0-11.
But the Colts at least can point and say we're missing the man. The Browns don't even look like an NFL team some weeks now.
Agreed.
And it's a stunning. Again, I'm surprised at how things turned out, but it always seems if you're a Cleveland fan and you think it can't get any worse, it does. And that deification really does go along with that. The hope that this time, the problem with LeBron is that he was the hometown hero, and he didn't just come into the league with hype. He came in with unprecedented hype and then outplayed the hype.
I was going to say, he's one of the rare incidences that he exceeded an unrealistic amount of hype, and he still completely exceeded it at every single turn. And the only place he's failed is in the finals and in the playoffs. That's literally the only failure of his entire career.
I know, and to see not just 7 years without a title, but to see him now with the cast that he wanted, whipping swing passes to Juwan Howard in crunch time like the ball is burning his hands. It wasn't, I thought against Boston, oh, my God, he knows he's leaving. Oh, my God, he quit. That may have been part of it, but to see it happen over and over again and over again 2 more times in the NBA Finals with D. Wade, with Chris Bosh, it was insane.
Yeah, he's always going to be the type of person that I think defers the blame and always considers himself to be above the fray of those things. At the end of the day, I think even if he doesn't win any titles, he's still going to go to bed and lay his head on that pillow and go, doesn't matter. I was the greatest, and nobody can ever deny. That's really how he's going to feel. He almost wants the titles to quiet the critics, as far as for their own good. But he's almost above it in his own mind. It's like the passes went off of their hands. The rim, the rim is where the ball bounced off of, not off of my golden fingers. I mean, it's absurd.
There's something. Brian Windhorst, I think, is a great reporter, great guy too, by the way. But he wrote something after the Heat season where he talked about, of course, it's a joke, the sense that LeBron actually has ever worked on a low-post game. I've yet to see any evidence of that.
If he did, oh, my Lord.
Oh, but Brian suggested maybe he work with a psychologist, which I think is a very reasonable, it's not an evil accusation. What is left for the guy to do but to try and confront his failures? Well, he seems, like you're saying, the least likely person in the world to ever look at himself in the mirror and not see a God. It's a very strange, narcissism, whatever the fancy word is for it. I think you're right. I think he's a guy who will never hold himself accountable for failure.
Let's go with megalomania. How's that?
It works for me.
That'll work for you.